Hello everyone, welcome back to another video on my channel, and today we need to talk about Clayton's mom. On last night's episode of 90 Day Fiance, we discovered Clayton's mom might have some issues with Anali and Anali's relationship with her son. And while some fans are on the mother's side and thinks Anali could be doing more in the relationship, it seems like most fans suspect the mother's motivations might be a little bit darker than just looking out for her son. The episode starts off with Clayton and his mother going to the pet store to get some fresh outfits for his guinea pigs for the upcoming wedding. Everyone wants to look the best for a wedding, am I right? And everything goes fine until they start talking about the wedding and the relationship in the car ride home. Clayton and his mother are driving back from the pet store. They're catching up about Clayton's San Diego trip, how things are going, how he feels about the wedding, when his mom starts to bring up some complaints she has about Anali and their relationship. She says she has no problem with Anali, but there have been some changes recently.
Like we're trying to go to sleep and stuff like that. All the lights were on and talking and loud and leaving everything laying out.
She's got some complaints that things have been a little noisier and messier since Anali has arrived, which I thought was understandable, but a little weird to complain about when she's kind of the one living with Clayton. You know, she's kind of the third party, his mom is. It's kind of Clayton's place and he's doing his thing in the relationship, so it felt a little weird to complain that you guys are a little too loud or you keep the place a little messy. But then I realized it's even weirder because she's living in their closets and might have a hoarding problem. I feel like if they were true roommates and you both had an equal stake in the place, then yeah, it's more reasonable to say, hey, can you quiet down? You know, maybe quiet hours or something like that. But if I was letting a buddy of mine crash on my couch for a couple months to get him back on his feet, and they started complaining that I was making a little too much noise or didn't like that my life partner moved in with me in my place, I'd feel kind of offended. It's like, hey, I'm making the sacrifice of offering you a place to stay in my place that I provide for, but I'm making that sacrifice to be nice. So don't bite the hand that feeds you and complain about what I'm giving you. But then again, that's if a buddy is sleeping on my couch and he's kind of a freeloader. You know, I don't know if Clayton sees the situation like that. We don't know how much the mother contributes to everything. You know, we don't know their dynamic. So I don't know how he feels about that, but he does tell us in a one-on-one that his mother does have a history of being a bit passive-aggressive and has a history of making comments like, oh, there's a lot of dishes out, which Clayton has learned to interpret as, hey, there's a lot of dishes, you better clean.
What I know that means is the dishes need done. To me, that's passive aggressive, and I hate that.
And while that's already annoying for Clayton, because passive aggression is pretty annoying, Clayton's also stuck in a weird place about it because Anali doesn't know enough English to really pick up on that passive aggression from his mother. She might pick up some body language or just get a general impression like, does mom not like me? She seems a little, I can't tell what's going on here. And since that can be a hard thing to communicate, Clayton doesn't really want to stir the pot with Anali and instead has to go to his mother and say like, hey, quit it. Okay, there's some tension here, things are a little bit weird, but here's where it takes a turn, potentially for the much worse. Because while Clayton was explaining that passive-aggressive stuff that he doesn't like from his mom, he also mentions some other complaints that his mom has about Anali. Namely, that she wishes Anali spoke more English and would make more American food for them.
She thinks that Anali should be speaking more English, cooking more American food.
His mom says she would feel better if Anali would just cook something American like once a week. And makes a suggestion, cheeseburgers.
Where's the cheeseburgers at?
Can't get more American than that, I guess. But before we get to the cheeseburgers, she starts talking about the English thing, and specifically how there's a little too much Spanish speaking in the house.
All I hear is Spanish, and it's like, I can't.
Before they can finish the car ride, Clayton tells his mother that she can be a bit defensive sometimes and kinda apparently has a history of thinking that the world is out to get her. And the mom has a very interesting answer where she says, no, I don't think people are out to get me, but maybe I should leave because I think you're out to get me.
You assume that everyone's like out to get you, and
I never once said that to anybody. Talking about me.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, if I had a place to go tomorrow, I'd go. I have a feeling that's what you're trying to do.
So fast forward a few hours and the three of them are back at home and Clayton and Anali are packing up to get ready to go on their trip to go to the wedding that is in 3 days. And maybe because the wedding is in 3 days, they're a little stressed and they're not having the easiest time communicating. They may not be full on arguing, but tensions are a little high, and the mom can tell that as she's hearing them kind of fight in Spanish across the hall. But instead of telling the camera that she's concerned with maybe how often they fight, we don't know how often they actually do fight, but instead of that being the focus of her concern, she brings up the language thing again in a way that just feels kind of weird.
I hear a lot of Spanish arguments. Because the more escalated, the faster she talks.
Clayton goes out to look for some stuff, ends up talking to his mom, and they end up talking again about the Spanish thing, where it's kind of boring, but the gist between the problems with Clayton and Anali this whole episode is that there's only 3 days into the wedding. There's a lot of planning to do. Clayton is the only English speaker between the two of them, so he thinks he has to make all these calls and do a bulk of the wedding planning. So he feels a little stressed about that, wish that Anali could help out, understands that she can't because, the English thing. But while Clayton is doing the majority of the work, well, really his sister is doing the majority of the work, but again, this is just a quick summary. Well, Clayton thinks that he has to do the majority of the work because of the language barrier with Anali not speaking English. Anali's big complaint is, yeah, but I can still do some things. The problem is you just don't tell me, you don't delegate anything, and I can't do anything at all because you essentially don't let me. So they're talking about this and Clayton's stress about the wedding planning when the mom interjects what kind of feels like her own agenda and out of the blue says, yeah, it would be good if she learns English. I don't think she even wants to learn English.
I don't think she has a desire to learn English. I don't know, I shouldn't say that, but I said what I said.
And after that, there's another scene where Clayton and Anali gets to the place they're staying at for the wedding. They meet up with Clayton's sister, who seems like she's the one that's actually doing all the work. And they talk about how things are going and the bachelorette party, and it's a little boring. Oh, and Clayton and Anali did talk about their disagreements in the car and kind of made up and said they'd communicate better. Well, Clayton said that at least. Anali didn't really say anything. But those were all the scenes with Clayton's mom, which is what we're talking about today, and trying to determine what the hell. And while I do think there are 2 perspectives here, and I will try to give what I think maybe the mother's perspective might be in a minute, you have to admit, it doesn't look very good for Clayton's mom. Clayton's mom is something else. Did this lady really just suggest that Anali needs to clean more when she's a hoarder who invaded her son's space with all her garbage? I think she's trying to sabotage the relationship so she can keep her closet. No wonder Anali hates it there. What on earth is wrong with Clayton's mom? She suggests that because Anali cooks chicken often and not beef, that's a reason to be disgruntled with her? I think it all stems from the fact that Clayton is fully providing for her and she knows that is about to end. She lives without any worries or problems, just the 2 of them. Now she's going to have to be an adult and is grasping at anything she can. I know she's not talking and being condescending to Anali when she lives in a closet. And the nerve of her asking her to speak English and hearing too much Spanish in the house? Wow. As a child of Haitian immigrants myself, my family and I have been hearing racist rhetoric like that our entire lives. So I'm not surprised. I just hope Anali can stand up for herself against this BS. I think we can all agree that to constantly tell a Spanish speaker that they need to speak more English when they just got here and criticize this foreigner who doesn't know anyone here and is in just this house in the middle of nowhere to them, that they're making their own food and aren't cooking American enough and we don't have enough cheeseburgers here. Not a good look. I know if I was moving to a new country to be with my international fiance and I'm uprooting my entire life to go to this new place and I meet the parents or at least the mom, and I'm in this house and everything is just so new and I haven't figured everything out yet and we gotta plan a wedding and all the stress and why are there cameras in my face? If I'm in the middle of all that chaos and adjustments and the one parent there is low-key criticizing me and wishing that I would just learn the language already and there's too much English in the house, when that's the only way I can communicate with my partner, the only person I know in this whole country, and if I'm trying to settle down and adjust and they're like, hey, why are you still making all your American food? You need to figure it out and just be our culture already. You need to speak our language, you need to make our food, you just need to be one of us already. Just speaking for me, just myself, I feel pretty bad. Pretty isolated, alone, probably pretty scared. Like, where is my lifeline here? I have one person in my partner, and the second closest person to me that I'm stuck living around doesn't feel like they really accept me for who I am. They kind of just want me to change, and there's just this tension there, and my problem is that I just exist and I don't know how to be just like them right now. That'd feel bad. That's a little insensitive. And although I don't like to admit it, if we're being honest here, and if we're in Anali's position and feeling maybe a little unwelcome or a little unsure, or we're not entirely sure what's the mom's motivations are, like, is she like kind of racist? And you're just wondering what's going on there? Even though I don't like to acknowledge that this is a reality, but the way Clayton's mom looks probably makes a difference. You see someone who looks like that, wishing there were more cheeseburgers in the house and there's too much Spanish here, and it can just, it's going to trigger some red flags, and it certainly seems to have triggered a lot of red flags by the general audience's reaction online. And that really may be one of his mom's motivations. But when I was watching the show, I did also see some other stuff. When she said earlier in the car that she would feel more comfortable if Anali would just cook something American once a week, the mother then adds that she's never seen Anali once actually ask Clayton what he wants for dinner.
I like to see him eat something good that he likes. I've never heard Anali ask her soon-to-be husband if he's want something to eat?
She mentions cheeseburgers specifically because, well, she probably does like cheeseburgers, but says that she knows Clayton. Clayton's always been a beef guy. He's not the biggest fan of chicken, and all Anali cooks is chicken.
Chicken and chicken and chicken and chicken. And he likes beef, you know?
She wants to make sure Clayton is taken care of by Anali, and even says that if Anali ever asked her, like, hey, why don't we do something American? Like, can you show me how to make one of your dishes? That the mother claims that she would be happy. She said, yeah, absolutely, let's cook together. You know, I'll show you how to do this thing. And, you know, suggested that it even could be kind of a family bonding experience if Anali were to show some interest in learning how to cook some American dishes.
I would teach her how to make something. She hasn't one time asked, hey, can you teach me how, or do you know how to do this? Or
So although it's a bit uncomfortable and sounds pretty weird and definitely raises some at least orange flags when she's talking about how there's not enough American food here, and kind of sounds like she's saying it's a little too foreign in this house, I'm not sure if her problem really is the food. And similarly, when she talks about there being too much Spanish in the house, it doesn't sound like she's saying there's too much Spanish is the problem, but rather that there's not enough opportunity for her to communicate in the conversation. If there's 3 people in the house and 2 of them don't speak the same language, it's gonna feel pretty uncomfortable for both people. I'm sure both Clayton's mom and Anali would love it if they could all speak the same language and then they could all communicate directly and even bond together, but they can't. And I'm sure for Anali that's uncomfortable because the only person she can communicate with is Clayton, but I'm sure it's also uncomfortable for the mom, who might be used to communicating with Clayton all the time, but now she doesn't have as much access to him, or now that they're speaking more Spanish, she just might feel a little bit more left out. And I wonder if possibly there's also maybe an empty nest kind of syndrome going on, where she's used to a certain amount of interaction with her son, but now that he's in this relationship and they're kind of moving on, she might feel like this is her last opportunity to be that close with Clayton and maybe just feels a little sad about it. Wishes they could all be together a little bit more, spend some more quality time. So again, I don't know, but it could be that maybe the mom's motivations were better than the whole racist stuff and might be sincerely looking out for her son because she may have seen some questionable signs from Anali in terms of her affection towards him. And to that, I will say, if we just take out the mom entirely and take out the food thing and take out the language thing, and instead we had Cameron asking like, hey, does Anali ever ask you what you want to eat or what you want to do? If a well-meaning friend asked that on the show, I get it. We've seen Anali, I'm not saying she's a bad person, but at least in the scenes together, she does seem like she's not nearly as warm as Clayton. A little dismissive, a little uninterested, a little disapproving. Clayton's a bit warmer. He's trying to smile more, make more jokes. She's kind of the more like, ha ha, doesn't seem as enthusiastic or positive in her responses compared to Clayton. So if you were a well-intentioned friend and you had access to seeing them all day and their dynamic, and you pick up that she's a little more cold and he's maybe a little bit more anxious or trying to be accommodating, and maybe Anali spends all her time in the room and doesn't interact with the mom a lot, and maybe the mom say, hey, maybe we could, cook something together this time, I could show you, and Anali is maybe just not interested or doesn't really want to get to know her and just kind of avoids it, then I could understand someone in the mom's position over time just kind of thinking like, maybe Anali's not that nice to my son. Maybe he's a little more giving than she is. Maybe she's not super accommodating. I know she's new here and I want her to feel comfortable, but it's been a couple months and still doesn't ever want to try speaking English and doesn't want to learn how to cook any English food. And I haven't actually seen her ask Clayton what he wants to eat. Kind of seems like it all revolves around trying to please her and make her happy. I just get a little worried. So again, maybe she's not the coolest with foreigners and there may be something there, but on the other side, there could also be some genuine concern from her about how nice and caring Anali is towards her son. And hey, if you think I'm giving the mom too much credit here, I'm not, because I'm not actually giving the mom any credit. I'm not making any prediction or assumption which or any of these motivations might actually be accurate for her. I'm not saying that she's not doing the worst things and she's actually this nice person that just looks out for her son, but I'm not saying the opposite either. I really don't know. I'm just offering possible explanations. That's all I'm doing. Frankly, I think the only reason I was able to see this possible other explanation so quickly is because I feel like I've kind of been Clayton in a relationship before. I mean, not like the awkward, pressuring course of stuff, but I mean, I've been in a long-term relationship with someone that I see now was very cold and not very accommodating, and I don't want to say selfish. I mean, she had her problems and I can understand that, but there was a dynamic where I felt like I was constantly trying to please and accommodate and meet her halfway, and it really didn't seem like the same effort was being put in on their side at all. And a lot of my own friends and family would see this dynamic, but wasn't really sure how to tell me this, and only told me afterwards that they just had some concerns and they only had some observations, such as, well, did she only ever cook what she wanted? Or, hey, we're all hanging out with your friends, but she didn't really seem to want to make an effort to get to know any of your friends, but you always get to know their friends. And there were all these little observations where they then wondered how much was she taking care of me and not just the other way around. So maybe that's not their dynamic at all, but I'm just letting you know that I'm aware I might have that bias. So if you pick up a bias, that might be it. Anyway, that's all I got for today's video. Let me know what you thought about Clayton and his mom and Anali in the comments down below, and what you thought of any of my analysis here. This is another special Wednesday or Thursday video, and there still will be another one on Saturday, so I hope you're enjoying the extra content. And until next time, if you enjoyed this video and you enjoy my content, make sure to hit subscribe, hit the like button, ring the bell for notifications, and every comment helps the algorithm. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.